We have here today Frank Fitzgerald. Frank is partner and director of technology at O'Shaughnessy Asset Management. Thank you for coming, Frank.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Frank, could you tell us a little bit more about your background and your work at O'Shaughnessy?
Sure. At O'Shaughnessy Asset Management, we're a $6.7 billion asset management firm based out of Stamford, Connecticut. We deal in building strategies off the factors described in What Works on Wall Street, Jim O'Shaughnessy's best-selling book. My role specifically is dealing with all the technology-oriented stuff, from the infrastructure to actually acting as the lead programmer and directing our programmers on how to automate business process. My role specifically deals much with the operations as well as trade construction. So we've built many proprietary tools in-house, but we also support many third-party tools that we integrate with our data.
So with your role and as director of technology, where do you sit in this buy versus build debate?
I don't really consider buy versus build a debate, more so than an actual decision that needs to be made with every time you're looking to solve a business need. In our case, we have a mixture of both. So with every business decision, we really look at what the cost is to implement, whether it be the purchasing or building in-house. We look at how we will be able to integrate with the data for that system. Usually one of the first questions I ask any vendor that comes in is whether or not there's an API that we're able to integrate our data with. So for the most part, we have a large mixture. In the case of O'Shaughnessy, we have built 7 or 8 platforms that we have had to make that decision for. A good example is our attribution system. Many attribution systems out there are very costly, but they deal in complexities that we don't necessarily need because we're an equity shop. Building an equity Brinson attribution system is actually quite simple, but most systems out there on the build, or on the buy, I should say, are set up for fixed income and other things that we don't necessarily need. So by looking at the cost of what it is to purchase or what it is for us to build, it's quite an easy decision for us to actually go ahead and build that one. While in other cases, we'll purchase systems that fit our business needs and will fit our business needs in the future.
So very much tailored solution to whatever works for you in that particular project.
Yes, I don't feel that it is a debate. It is definitely a decision on every single business process.
How do you think, given that, how do you think the vendor-client relationship has evolved over the past 5 years? Where do you think it's going over the next 5 years?
Well, I think over the past 5 years it's become strained a bit. I think that it's becoming easier to build in-house the applications due to the programming technologies available to customers, as well as the in-house staff that people have brought on from a programming perspective. Additionally, I think that the standards that we hopefully need these vendors to adhere to are making it easier for us to switch between vendors. At the moment, vendors try and latch onto clients and get you in bed with them, and making it very difficult to move between 2 vendors of the same product. I think that paradigm is going to change soon enough, where standards are going to start making it easier for companies and clients to move between various vendors and putting a strain on those relationships directly. Over the next 5 years, I actually see a larger in-house build for many products that fit business needs internally more than going with third-party products that aren't necessarily as customizable.
Excellent. So Frank, at TSAM, at the Technology and Operational Strategy stream, I hear that you are speaking on a panel, and that panel is about technology, how you can leverage technology to provide a competitive advantage. How do you think you can leverage technology to provide competitive advantage?
Well, at O'Shaughnessy, we're big believers in technology. We have 1/5 of our staff is programmers in general, and about 1/3 of our entire research staff and technology is able to program in some fashion or another, which gives us great competitive advantage. As a whole, though, I think it's really where everything's going. And I think we're going to find over the next 10 years that you're going to find not just the technology teams programming, but you're going to find traders programming. You're going to find general people within business programming. Much like you didn't have people using Excel 20 years ago, you now have people using Excel all over the place. Not just the financial analysts, but the salespeople as well. And we're going to start to see that paradigm change just with the generational shift. The younger generations are becoming more comfortable with computing, and programming is actually getting easier than it was 20 years ago. I couldn't program in Pascal if you had me try, but programming in .NET is relatively simple to learn.
So the future is going back into the hands of programmers.
Well, I would say that most people in business are going to program whether or not they are programmers by nature. They will have some ability to program. Exactly. I see many business analysts programming in Visual Basic inside Excel. They may not call it programming, but it is. And that paradigm is going to shift even further to create a better competitive advantage for companies.
Do you have any closing thoughts, anything that you'd like to tell us about your role and technology within asset management?
Well, when I was first asked to speak on competitive advantages in technology, I brought up the idea that what we need to do is not necessarily be more competitive individually as companies, but become more competitive as an industry. And how do we do that, right? And I think the easiest way that we do that is by creating standards on how we transfer data between companies. Right now, every time I deal with a different vendor, I have a different standard that I adhere to actually transmit that data. And what we need to do is create standardized objects across the industry for things like holdings, things like performance, things like security level information. And right now, we're just not doing that. And we're causing a whole layer of translators, people that are just allowing that data to talk between two companies. That's a huge overhead cost. And additionally, in the future, if we don't standardize this information, some of the future technologies won't be able to be utilized, like artificial intelligence. Computers are very binary. They're 1 and 0s, right? If I have an object that has ticker on it, and it has a capital T, and I have one over here that has a lowercase t, a computer doesn't recognize one or the other.
Sure.
And if you look at history, this is not a new idea. You look at the railroads in the 1800s, right? They all had different sized tracks. And every time they got to the end of one track, they'd have to take that cargo off and load it onto the next train in order for that track to move that information across, or in that case, cargo. We're having the same problem in our industry, right? We need to actually create a standard to transfer this information and become more competitive as an entire industry and not just an individual company.
Frank, thank you very much for coming and joining us today. That was most informative.
Thanks.